Good morning and happy blessed Friday. I was thinking about a conversation I had years ago with my mom, and thinking about it, I'm like, I must have said or did something that pushed her in this direction. And it kind of went something like this. She says, Shani, when you leave our home, you don't just represent yourself, you represent your entire family. And I know back then, I probably thought, my parent, another parent, a person who doesn't understand what I'm thinking or what I'm going through, having another conversation about whatever, right? But today it came up because it's just interesting that sometimes time and space gives you exactly what you need to understand how the lesson applies. And it brought up for me accountability, and that goes in so many different directions it can go, rather. And so I think about the accountability of people who are on a team and they don't show up and do their part, and there is no accountability. It makes me wonder if they ever learned what it meant, like the impact that they have on other people, and what it meant to not be accountable and to not show up and not be consistent. It made me think about a relationship that I was in, and at that time, how courageous it was for the person I was with to move towards me in that way, and to reflect to me how I was coming off to them. And being that my understanding of me is very limited, in that I can only be who I am and show up how I know how to be. Um, and so to hear someone outside of myself reflect to me who they see and who they experience back then was hard. I misinterpreted what was the gift that was being given to me. Instead, I became very woe is me, right? Like, I cried, and I felt like what he was saying was that he didn't like me. And that wasn't it at all. He was saying that I love you enough to come to you and tell you, when you act this way, when you speak this way, when you behave this way. And that takes courage, because that could go many different directions. And so, thinking about that situation as a mature adult, I completely and totally respect it and understand it, even though it was hard. And sometimes the lessons that we encounter are hard, but they're a must. They're a must for us to grow. I mean, we can't smell our own self, right? I mean, we can smell ourselves, but we can't really fully know what that smells like, because if we're used to something, that's all we know. And it takes people holding us accountable, right? And checking in with us, to say, hey, I just want to check in with you to see how you're doing, because you're not talking like your usual self, or acting like your usual self, or behaving like your usual self. And it makes me wonder, like, how many people do you have in your life that hold you accountable and that you can hold accountable, and just how important that is, right? That as a parent, I have to hold myself accountable. Um, I have to learn how to teach my kids to be accountable, because there will be times where they are in relationship and they say or do something, and the expectation is, because I'm their parent, that I will automatically defend them. And the stance is, yes, I will defend you, but not in a way where, if you're wrong, that I will then justify your actions, your words, or behaviors. I will defend you in that I will pull you aside and say, hey, so what were you thinking? And how did you how did you feel about it? And if you're wrong, I'm going to say you're wrong. And if you're right, I'll say you're right. And if there's a way to work something out, I'll encourage you to do so, right? And then I thought about people in intimate relationships where maybe there's something going on in their relationship, and they're out with friends, and they step outside the relationship instead of trying to figure out ways to either process it work through it, better understand it. And people who they're around know that they're going through something. And I wonder, do they encourage them to keep going left off the path, or do they say, hey, you have actually something really good, and I know you're going through a hard time, and I encourage you to work that out or fix it, and or hold you accountable and say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And to get you to stop and think. And I think that those people are pillars, and they're very important in all of our lives. And so, who who keeps you accountable? Do you keep yourself accountable? And what does it mean to you? How important is it to you to be responsible, accountable, and able to make decisions that don't continue to deeply harm or impact you in negative ways, or people who you say you love and you care about? Thank you for listening. I love you. Happy Blessed Friday.